It's appointed one day for every man to die, and then the judgment. For Jim Harbaugh, maybe the judgment comes before that fateful day. Welcome to the Voice of College Football, Michigan. Just took in Jim Harbaugh's appearance at Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis, and I thought it was stellar by Jim Harbaugh standards. Now, this is a guy that typically comes across as quirky, says some things that are quite curious, where you have to scratch your head and think, where did he come up with that, or what does it exactly mean, or that didn't make him or his program look very smart, even though he's an intelligent man. Let's make no mistake about that, who has succeeded at every stop and to a certain degree even in Ann Arbor. But on this particular day, I thought he made a whole lot of sense. I thought he seemed authentic, honest, open, forthright, made no excuses, laid it all out there. Okay, not that he was just spilling his guts to everyone, but three things stood out, because you can go watch the Harbaugh comments. Of course, I took it all in, but I want to have this conversation with all of you as Michigan fans. Leave your comments below on your thoughts. Okay, number one concerned Mike Macdonald, new defensive coordinator. I thought he was very specific in his analysis of what makes Mike Macdonald a tremendous hire. And, of course, his brother recommended him. Smart. Basically, he revamped the Baltimore defense. And so he was smart enough to review the Baltimore defense, what was going wrong, fit it against the personnel, and then come up with a new system, a new alignment, new approach that fit the personnel and worked. Attention to detail, teacher, communicator. Those are all pretty standard lines. But identifies traits in players to where he knows how to fit them best in the scheme and get through to them as well. I thought that was the hidden nugget there on Mike Macdonald. Also, I thought it was a good side note that John Harbaugh basically said, I'm going to let him go, and he's all yours because I love Michigan football and I love you. It's all shed a tear. Jim and John with a moment there. Okay. To further the coaching perspective of this, and with it being largely a new coaching staff at Michigan on both sides of the football, I thought Harbaugh was able to explain in good terms, in understandable terms, how much this particular coaching staff has gelled together quickly, that they trust each other, that there's a lot of lively debate, even kind of arguments about which way to go, but they battle it out. It's a competition. They battle it out. Then they all buy in at the end, and they figure it out. They trust each other. I thought that was a pretty healthy look at the way the Michigan coaching staff is coming together. Granted, this all sounds good before they kick off on September 4th. We know that. And then point number three, of course, the one that's going to gain the headlines is the Ohio State line. I did think it was interesting that before he delivered this line and was asked by a Columbus media person about winning a lot of games, but not winning the Big Ten championship, not defeating Ohio State. What is Michigan now? 2015 through 19. 0-5 is Harbaugh against Ohio State. Number one, Jim Harbaugh called the Buckeyes Ohio, which I know Michigan fans love, and Brady Hoke could certainly appreciate. In addition to that he then called Michigan State the rival in certain terms. But he said, we're going to beat Ohio State or die trying. No guarantees there. The guarantees can be hollow. There are tons of athletes and coaches out there that have guaranteed in the past, a la Joe Namath, who, of course, delivered. So I don't necessarily need to hear him say, we're going to beat Ohio State. He doesn't need to make the Jim Tressel speech of 2001. That we're going to beat Ohio State, I guarantee it. But he did state that they're going to beat them or die trying. That's all he can say. That's all they can do is do their best. There are a number of coaches in college football that I enjoy hearing from, and they're in the minority because most of them just spit out a bunch of coach speak, especially during these media days. We could get them in a back room and inject a truth serum, and it would be fascinating discussion, but we can't do that. So you need to latch on to the guys that really will tell it like it is and share their opinion. Brett Bielema, now at Illinois, and a few others. Eli Drinkwitz was a breath of fresh air at Missouri at SEC Media Days, but of course the king of the conversation in regards to combining the talking and the winning would be Dabo Swinney at Clemson. I believe, and I've always said this, since he has risen to prominence in college football and become outspoken and a guy and a coach that people listen to, of course they weren't listening to him necessarily in 2010, but since he's won a couple national championships and his team is one of the three elites in college football, everything he says is heard. I think Dabo Swinney is good for college football. I have no doubt. And that doesn't mean I agree with everything he says. I have posted videos at the Voice of College Football stating what Dabo Swinney just said makes no sense, it's contradictory, and it's unreasonable, or whatever the case might be. So I don't agree with Dabo Swinney all the time, but Dabo Swinney is good for college football. He's a good man based on everything we've seen and know about him. We don't know his private life, but he's a good man, a man of faith, and his players love him. There's a reason they love him, because he cares about them, and then he goes out and wins football games and kicks the rest of the tail in the ACC and most of the time in the rest of the country. So, point number one here in regards to our response to Dabo Swinney's appearance at ACC kickoff would be NIL. Dabo Swinney was presented with the question, NIL. You were hesitant about NIL. I've also heard it stated in other places that Dabo Swinney's on record as saying he does not believe that college football players should be paid. I am guessing that Dabo Swinney meant college football players should not be paid by the institutions in terms of earning a salary. He probably still believes that, and that's not what's being done. That's not NIL. NIL is basically incorporating yourself, being a business, and being available to sign a contract with businesses for your services as an independent agent of sorts. That's not being an employee of a university as a football player. So I'm believing that Dabo Swinney has stuck to his word on that, even though he's being misrepresented, I believe. Leave your comments below if you know anything different. Also, he stated he was not hesitant about NIL or contradictory or negative in any way about NIL. He said that basically their approach at Clemson to NIL fits in with what they're already doing in providing financial literacy programs and teaching, still in line with their priorities at Clemson to graduate the players, give them a great collegiate experience, a great football experience, and win championships. So that won't change, but they'll just add a component to their financial assistance right now, their financial training, instruction. He talked about how he worked in college, but again, he was umpiring games and mowing grass and doing those sorts of things. This slightly different with DJ Uiagalelei. I don't think he's going to be painting many barns around Clemson, South Carolina. Okay. This was the main narrative that I got out of Dabo Swinney, and I think it is tremendous. Even though I'm for an expanded playoff, I'm a college football fan and analyst. I've been in the broadcasting field. I've been in the TV industry. That's my slice of it, and been a fan, of course. I want to see more football. If we could play these in terms of a video game instead of having guys go out there and slam helmets together, then it would be phenomenal. And I do believe that the expanded playoff is better for competition and a more meaningful championship. Right now, it's an invitational. In the expanded playoff field, it will still be an invitational, but all the reasonable teams that have any shot of winning a national championship will be there, unlike today. So the expanded playoff, despite the 12 teams not making sense because buys do not work, and for my video on that, certainly check it out on the main channel. But I thought Dabo Swinney, and I watched both the Dabo Swinney appearance at the podium, but also his 25 minutes on the side with reporters. I thought that he stated his case, and this is one of the reasons why he's good for college football. He said, I attended the proposal. It must have been the night before the ACC kickoff, where all the coaches and other people were presented with the playoff proposal, and he said it was a tremendous presentation. He gave all sorts of appreciation and respect to the committee that put it together and all the research, and said they did a great job of both researching and delivery. But Dabo Swinney's sticking up for the collegiate football player, saying, does anybody that doesn't play or coach football at this level understand the amount of hard work and dedication and the grind, the mental and physical grind that's involved in playing at that level, meaning not just the level of the 12 games during the regular season, but the collegiate football playoff level against elite competition. And he used, for example, Clemson's experience at Levi Stadium in the 2018 championship game when they beat Alabama, and coming off the field and just reaching that high, that pinnacle, defeating the giant of the sport, going in the locker room and just cutting loose, letting loose, celebrating. But that would not be the experience with an expanded playoff. Okay, so the only inaccuracy or inconsistency there is, of course, there are playoff games now, so Clemson is playing the likes of, who have they played in the semifinal round? Ohio State 3 times, Notre Dame, Oklahoma. So they do have to play that kind of an opponent in the semifinal game already. So this already happens where they lay it all out on the line, they expend all the energy, they get beat up and banged up and go through the fight, and then they've got to do it all over again. So that already happens, but his case is that they have to do it multiple times and how difficult that is. So he's just looking out for the college football player, and I think it's commendable. That's the reason he's not for the playoff being expanded, and he was not. According to him, I don't remember the rhetoric at the time, he was not for the 4-team playoff. Basically for the same reason, plus it devalues the bowls, and he did a great job of outlining what college football is all about and should be all about, and that we should have focus on, give attention, cherish, and value the bowl system and the bowl games that reward the teams for a successful season. And that's already deteriorating and will even more so with the 12-team playoff. So I thought all of that was fascinating in regards to Dabo Swinney staying true to his word and his stance on the college football playoff, defending the position of the college football player that really has no other representation in this. And when it's all said and done, saying, hey, the train has left the station. I'm not fighting it. I'm just letting you know, let's keep the player in mind when we build this thing out and figure out how to lessen the load leading into the playoff. You can watch Mike Norvell's news conference and also the side chat with the reporters. It's about 50 minutes. I try to review these conversations and then look for what really matters, because Mike Norvell spit out a lot of coach speak. And that's not an indictment on Mike Norvell. Every coach speaks a lot of coach speaks. That's the nature of the job, and that's why it's called coach speak. They don't want to tell us too much. But in reading between the lines, reading Mike Norvell's facial expressions and what he really focused on and what he tried to bring across that was a little bit outside of the typical rhetoric, this is what I came up with. That the pass rush last season was awful. Okay, Jermaine Johnson is being pushed hard to be an elite pass rusher, to be the best pass rusher on the team, that he's got the ability coming from Georgia, that he's a tremendous player, tremendous upside. This is his last season. So Mike Norvell emphasized a number of times, we got Jermaine Johnson for one season, meaning we got to get a lot out of him. We don't want him coming in here being an average player, taking a roster spot, scholarship, and gone. No, we need a big impact from him. There's a reason that Mike Norvell brought 3 players, and Jermaine Johnson was one of them, to ACC kickoff, and all 3 players are transfer players. I think that says a lot about Mike Norvell and the program he took over. So they are pushing Jermaine Johnson hard. Mike Norvell made a point of that a number of times. And he told him when he transferred in, we're going to be tough on you. We need you to be a leader. We need you to be a force on the defensive side. All right, he loves the quarterbacks. He brought 2 of them with him, Mackenzie Milton and Jordan Travis. 2 very different players and also 2 very different experiences thus far, and we will talk about that here. Mike Norvell likes that they push each other. He likes that they both are hard workers. We hear those sorts of things all the time. Okay, the hyperbole with Mackenzie Milton was a bit much. And as soon as it was announced that Mackenzie Milton had transferred to Florida State, I thought, slam dunk, this is a great thing. If he's able to reach his heights of 2017 and 18, of course, then he's one of the top 10 or 12 quarterbacks in the nation, and Florida State has immediately solved an issue of their quarterback situation going back to 2017, 2016. It's not been a good position at Florida State, and Mackenzie Milton instantly makes it much better. But even if he can't, even if he's 75% of the player, he's going to be a better quarterback than anybody they've got. Plus, he's a leader. He's a winner. He brings that attitude and that experience of success to Florida State. None of the players on this roster have succeeded. They don't know success. So with Mackenzie Milton, the hyperbole I'm speaking of with Mike Norvell is calling him the ultimate competitor. Okay, there can only be one out there, so that's a bit much. Ultimate competitor, and that when Mike Norvell was at Memphis taking on Mackenzie Milton-led UCF teams, that they played some of the greatest games in college football history. I know they were really good games. They were shootouts. They were fun. Greatest games in college football history. Okay. All right. Leadership. He competes. He understands the process of preparing for games and preparing himself to play. And again, the infusion of the experience of success, not just the experience, but the experience of success is something Mackenzie Milton brings that pretty much nobody else has. Jermaine Johnson at Georgia to a certain extent, but not that star power with the success of having been integral to the success at UCF is huge, obviously. Mike Norvell talked about college football needing the state of Florida. He doesn't talk in any type of animosity toward Manny Diaz and Miami, although that was brought up, or Florida. Of course, Mike Norvell has yet to play against Clemson or against Florida. They got whipped 52-10 to Miami. But he talked about the tremendous opportunity in the state of Florida because of the great talent, the great passion for the sport, the great high school players, that it's an important state and college football needs Florida. He made no excuses about the 3-6 record, didn't mention 3-6, of course, made no excuses about the failures and the lack of success of 2020. He could have. The one thing that he threw in there a number of times was we've had the youngest team in college football. What I heard out of Mike Norvell that really speaks to the situation he took over from Willie Taggart and before him Jimbo Fisher, but most recently Willie Taggart, is that they had to develop trust. He didn't say it. It's not obvious, but that he basically is saying we had to develop trust. We didn't have trust in the locker room. I thought that was key. And the way he phrased it and the way he talked about it was he did not bash the team, the culture, his predecessors in any way, but I think there's an underlying communication there that he didn't inherit the best situation in the world. Interesting comments he made about Jordan Travis as well as Mackenzie Milton, and even maybe more revealing that he is pushing Jordan Travis out there to be a leader, that he needs to be a vocal leader, that he needs to kind of bow his chest and get out there as a leader. He talked about the challenges Jordan Travis had in having very little experience with the first unit or with anybody, being the starting quarterback at Florida State going into the Georgia Tech game. And he had very little reps at that point. So the offseason growth, development, and the confidence. And then he said, he made a note of, I just kind of sat back and watched him at the podium today and saw kind of a different guy, a more developed, more polished, just more confident, more secure and assured individual. And I was impressed with Jordan Travis at the mic, certainly. I thought he was the best spoken of the three. And Mike Norvell made it a point to talk about his passion, Jordan Travis's passion and his spirit. That's the only time he used that word. Okay, and then finally, again, with the youngest team in college football, apparently, I haven't run the numbers, but the youngest team in college football in 2020, I would expect it's not necessarily the youngest this year, but still has not succeeded. These guys have never succeeded on a college football field. That he is, I thought this was pretty much wraps it up in regards to looking for leaders and competitors. He didn't see competitors on this team, guys that wanted to compete, that wanted to show that they were the best and would lead the rest of the group. Lead the rest of the group when the coaches aren't around. The coaches can't be on the field during the game. The coaches can't be there in the summer. That he needed leaders to step up, and competition breeds success. Competition breeds a better level of play, and Mike Norvell is certainly looking for that. Florida State coming off 3-6. Try not to say it too many more times here at the Voice of College Football, FSU. Your thoughts about Florida State? We are just about 5 weeks away from Notre Dame on Labor Day night. That will be fascinating. Please leave your comments down below. Like the video, share the videos out on social media. If you enjoy the content, we are going to thrive and succeed here at the Voice of College Football based on your support. And you can do that in so many ways. But right now, share the videos out on social media. Subscribe right here. Hit that bell for the notifications. That way you know when we're going live, which is, again, Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, most of the time, and when we drop new content right here at the Voice of College Football, FSU.